Hello and a warm welcome to all listeners. My name is Lena Himmler and I'm a trainee from the Press and Public Relations Department at the University of Potsdam. Today's podcast is linked to the latest issue of the university magazine Portal, which has the theme Saving the World. So this podcast will also be about a very interesting project who tries to make the world a little bit better, a little bit greener. And I have a special guest for you from the University of Potsdam as well. So have fun listening and make sure to check out the magazine as well. What if we all did absolutely nothing for one day a week? How would we feel? And what would our world look like? We could rest, and as a key side effect, the environment could rest too. It needs this so urgently, especially now in the Anthropocene era, in view of the ecological crises. It would be a regular break from traffic fumes, construction site noise, and environmental toxins. Sounds like a weekly Earth Day? Jonathan Schorsch, professor of Jewish religious and intellectual history at the University of Potsdam, goes even further with his idea of a Green Sabbath.
Depending on which period of my life we're talking about, I observe Sabbath in a traditional way. But my project, the Green Sabbath project, is really very much non-denominational. And even I would say, while not wanting to frighten off anyone of religious background, a little bit heterodox. But we can get to that. So, personally, I often will get together with friends. But when I'm with my family, Sabbath, Shabbat is very much about family, being together, eating together. Again, traditionally, it's very much about feasting and delighting in this day. That is really meant to be different than all the other days of the week.
The idea is as follows: to minimize the need for goods one day a week, to keep the consumption of natural resources as low as possible, and to minimize the emission of carbon dioxide and other pollutants. In addition to the consumption-critical aspects, the spiritual component of life should not be neglected.
If you think that only changing laws and policies and political parties is going to solve everything, without people internalizing the new values, new approaches, you're also lost. So again, that's why for me things like why ritual, why practice, which so often require community, right? Sabbath, you can't do Sabbath on your own. I mean, you can, but it's kind of sad, right? Yeah. It's to just do abstinence alone, I don't find so moving and meaningful. Ideally, really, it's a practice that you do in community.
Professor Dr. Jonathan Schorsch is not only a university lecturer, but also founding director of the Jewish Activism Summer School in Berlin. He wants to take something from the often abstract academic world into the wider society and give something back to the world. During the big break, the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, Schorsch came up with the idea for the project. Many people from different cultural and religious backgrounds came together online to celebrate a day of asking fundamental questions and living them in community.
We have to think about what we're doing and why. What is it we're living for? What is it we're doing everything for? So it's a way of saying there are things that are more important than just functionality. There are things that are more important than economic well-being.
The religious scholar is concerned with nothing less than creating a mass movement for environmental protection. Whether people believe in God or not and which religion they belong to is less important to Schorsch. The Green Sabbath is not just for Jews. It is intended to provide people from different backgrounds with a set of options on how they can deal with themselves and their environment more consciously. Judaism is a very good starting point for such a Green Earth Day, says theologian Schorsch.
It becomes a day of, or 24 hours, 25 hours traditionally, from the Jewish perspective, from sundown to sundown. It's a day that's inherently connected to natural cycles, right? The sun, the moon, more the sun, right? It's a day that is automatically hyper-local because you don't use transportation. There's actually, in Rabbinic Judaism, a limit on how many, if you're only allowed to walk 2,000 steps, 2,000 meters, sort of. It's not exactly a meter, 2,000 cubits, and that's kind of the limit of how far you're even allowed to walk. Right? One doesn't use any kind of industrial processes. Traditionally, in the Bible, it said one doesn't use fire, and from that the rabbis extrapolate. There's a whole list of forms of labor that one doesn't do, and many scholars understand that these rabbinic restrictions have as a goal refraining from impacting on nature for that day. So many of the forms of labor and the things that are prohibited are essentially things that transform nature in one way or another. So it's a great example of temporarily, in a recurring fashion, not needing to do anything. You can just be.
So on this Saturday morning, Jonathan Schorsch doesn't switch on his laptop, unlike on the other 6 days of the week. His smartphone is also switched off. Not far from his Berlin flat, he walks through the park at Gleisdreieck and prays in the synagogue. On Friday evenings, shortly before sunset, he lights Sabbath candles to provide him and other Jews with spiritual light. He takes it easy on the most important day of the week in Judaism, stays close to his home, and does nothing strenuous on this day. Schorsch is observing a Green Sabbath today.
From our perspective in the 21st century, in the Anthropocene era, I see it more as opportunity to get off your screens, get away from technologies, not needing to use electricity, or again, being permitted to not use electricity in its maximalist form. You wouldn't cook, you wouldn't use electricity, you wouldn't drive a car, you wouldn't go to work, you wouldn't have a factory operating.
This ancient Jewish practice can be seen as a subversion of everyday life. It is a way of expressing that there are more important things than economic growth, productivity, and pure functionality, says Schorsch. So, is there also an aspect to it that criticizes capitalism? Absolutely, says Schorsch. The Sabbath, or Shabbat, makes it clear to people that they are not just an economic unit, an employee or an entrepreneur, that they do not belong to their employer.
But it gets to the heart of the growth economy. And from an environmental perspective, we now understand, more and more of us, that the growth economy is itself part of the problem. This idea of infinite growth is impossible. If resources are finite, you can't have infinite growth. I just read, there's a great quote from, I think it's David Attenborough, the great filmmaker, environmentalist, who says exactly that. Anyone who believes you can have infinite growth with finite resources is either a madman or an economist.
In any case, the practice of the Green Sabbath unites two worlds in which Jonathan Schorsch has been active his entire life. The world of Judaism, in which the son of a rabbi grew up, and that of environmental activism, in which he immersed himself as a young American. The Sabbath is supposed to be a foretaste of the world to come, as it literally says in the Babylonian Talmud, says Schorsch. When it comes to religion, many people think of prohibitions and regulations.
But the goal is really to delight in existence, to enjoy just being, breathing, enjoying your family, enjoying your community. It forces you in some sense, or allows you to, tell stories to each other, read books with each other, maybe sing.
Schorsch wants to make a difference at a local level and is looking at how the project can be translated from the website into real local life. The first Green Sabbath weekend took place in Berlin in October 2023. He would also like to bring the Green Sabbath to students at the University of Potsdam, with a major event such as a summer school. He is also currently writing a book on the topic together with colleagues. This is also intended to initiate a change in values and make the world a little greener and more spiritual.